New Hampshire is located in New England, in the extreme northeastern corner of the United States. It is bordered to the north by the Canadian province of Quebec, to the east by Maine and a 16-mile, 25 kilometers, stretch of the Atlantic Ocean, to the south by Massachusetts, and to the west by Vermont. Its capital is Concord, which lies in the south-central part of the state. The capital of New Hampshire is Concord, which is situated along the Merrimack River. In 1725 the site was granted by the Massachusetts Bay Colony as Pennacook Plantation. Settlement began in 1727. The community was incorporated as Rumford in 1733 by Massachusetts. In 1741 it was determined that the town was within the jurisdiction of the province of New Hampshire. Bitter litigation ended in an appeal to the Privy Council in England, and the dispute was not settled until 1762. In 1765 the town was reincorporated by New Hampshire and named Concord to signify the peaceful settlement of the boundary dispute. It became the capital in 1808. New Hampshire is known as the Granite State because of its extensive granite formations and quarries. The moniker also alludes to the strength and resilience of its people. Granite from New Hampshire has been used for construction all over the United States. However, the industry has declined dramatically since the mid-20th century. New Hampshire's state motto is "Live Free or Die." The phrase was officially adopted in 1945, and the words are those of John Stark, who fought in the American Revolution. He wrote the phrase as part of a toast for a reunion of other military figures. Because of ill health, Stark was unable to attend the event, and instead sent a letter, dated July 31, 1809. New Hampshire is a state in the New England region of the northeastern United States. It borders Massachusetts to the south, Vermont to the west, Maine and the Gulf of Maine to the east, and the Canadian province of Quebec to the north. Of the 50 U.S. states, New Hampshire is the 7th smallest by land area and the 10th least populous, with a population of 1,377,529 residents as of the 2020 census. Concord is the state capital and Manchester is the most populous city. New Hampshire's motto, "Live Free or Die," reflects its role in the American Revolutionary War. Its nickname, the Granite State, refers to its extensive granite formations and quarries. It is well known for holding the first primary in the U.S. presidential election cycle, and its resulting influence on American electoral politics. New Hampshire was inhabited for thousands of years by Algonquian-speaking peoples such as the Abenaki. Europeans arrived in the 17th century, with the English establishing some of the earliest non-indigenous settlements. The province of New Hampshire was established in 1629, named after the English county of Hampshire. Up to the time of the French and Indian War, New Hampshire was on the frontier of British territory and saw action against the French and their Indian allies. Following tensions between the British colonies and the Crown in the 1760s, New Hampshire saw one of the earliest acts of rebellion, with the seizing of Fort William and Mary from the British in 1774. In 1776, it became the first of the British North American colonies to establish an independent government and state constitution. It signed the United States Declaration of Independence and contributed troops, ships, and supplies in the war against Britain. In 1788, it was the 9th state to ratify the U.S. Constitution, bringing it into effect. Through the mid-19th century, New Hampshire was an active center of abolitionism, and fielded close to 32,000 Union soldiers during the U.S. Civil War. Afterwards the state saw rapid industrialization and population growth, becoming a center of textile manufacturing, shoemaking, and paper-making. The Amoskeag Manufacturing Company in Manchester was the largest cotton textile plant in the world. French Canadians formed the most significant influx of immigrants, and a quarter of New Hampshire residents have French-American ancestry. Reflecting a nationwide trend, New Hampshire's industrial sector declined after World War II. Since 1950, its economy has diversified to include financial services, real estate, education, transportation, and high-tech, with manufacturing still higher than the U.S. average. Its population surged as highways connected it to Greater Boston and led to more commuter towns. New Hampshire is among the wealthiest and most educated states, tying Massachusetts for the highest human development in the nation. It is one of 9 states without an income tax and has no taxes on sales, capital gains, or inheritance, while relying heavily on local property taxes to fund education. Consequently, its state tax burden is among the lowest in the country. New Hampshire is one of the least religious states and known for its libertarian-leaning political culture. It is one of the least left-wing states in New England. The New Hampshire Republican Party has held a trifecta majority in state-level government since 2017, with the exception of 2019 and 2020, while the Democratic Party has held a majority on federal-level representation in Congress. With its mountainous and heavily forested terrain, New Hampshire has a growing tourism sector centered on recreation. It has some of the highest ski mountains on the East Coast and is a major destination for winter sports. Mount Monadnock is among the most climbed mountains in the world. Other activities include observing the fall foliage, summer cottages along lakes and the seacoast, motorsports at the New Hampshire Motor Speedway in Loudoun, and Motorcycle Week, a motorcycle rally held in Weirs Beach in Laconia. The White Mountain National Forest includes most of the Appalachian Trail between Vermont and Maine, and has the Mount Washington Auto Road, where visitors may drive to the top of 6,288-foot, 1,917 m, Mount Washington. New Hampshire is a distinctive state in the northeastern United States, located within the New England region and bordered by Vermont to the west, Maine and the Atlantic Ocean to the east, Massachusetts to the south, and the Canadian province of Quebec to the north. Though it is one of the smallest states in terms of both land area and population, its historical, political, cultural, and environmental significance far exceeds its physical size. From early colonial settlement to its modern role in American politics and regional development, New Hampshire has maintained a strong identity shaped by independence, local governance, and a deep connection to its natural landscape. Its motto, "Live Free or Die," reflects a long-standing cultural ethos rooted in self-reliance, civic participation, and resistance to centralized control, values that continue to influence the state's institutions and public life today. The geography of New Hampshire is remarkably varied, especially given its compact size. The northern region is dominated by the White Mountains, part of the Appalachian Mountain Range, which includes Mount Washington, the highest peak in the northeastern United States. This area is known for its rugged terrain, alpine climate, and rapidly changing weather conditions, which have historically challenged both settlers and travelers. The central region transitions into rolling hills, dense forests, and freshwater lakes, while the southern region becomes more urbanized and economically connected to the greater Boston metropolitan area. One of the most notable natural features is Lake Winnipesaukee, a large and popular lake that plays a central role in recreation, tourism, and local identity. Although the state's Atlantic coastline is relatively short at just about 18 miles, it holds historical and economic importance, particularly in terms of early trade, fishing, and modern tourism. Much of the state remains forested, making New Hampshire one of the most heavily wooded states in the United States, a characteristic that has shaped both its economy and cultural identity. The historical foundations of New Hampshire trace back to indigenous populations, particularly the Abenaki peoples, who lived in the region long before European arrival. European settlement began in the early 17th century, primarily by English colonists who established fishing villages, trading posts, and small agricultural communities along the coast and river valleys. As one of the original 13 colonies, New Hampshire played an important role in the development of early American political identity. In 1776, it became the first colony to establish an independent government and constitution, marking a significant step toward American independence. This early embrace of self-governance remains a defining feature of its identity. During the 19th century, the state underwent industrial transformation, particularly through the development of textile mills powered by rivers such as the Merrimack. These mills attracted immigrant labor, especially from Canada, Ireland, and France, contributing to a changing demographic and cultural landscape. Industrial towns grew rapidly during this period, forming the backbone of the state's economy and shaping its urban development patterns. As the 20th century progressed, New Hampshire gradually transitioned from an industrial economy toward a more diversified structure. Manufacturing remains present, especially in specialized fields such as precision engineering, machinery, electronics, and advanced materials, but it no longer dominates the economic landscape. Instead, services, healthcare, education, tourism, and technology have become increasingly important. The state's proximity to Boston has also significantly influenced its economic evolution, particularly in the southern region, where many residents commute across state lines for employment in finance, education, healthcare, and technology sectors. This has created a strong economic interdependence between southern New Hampshire and the broader New England region. Tourism continues to play a vital role, driven by seasonal attractions such as skiing in the White Mountains during winter and hiking, boating, and camping during summer. This seasonal cycle supports rural economies but also introduces fluctuations in employment and income stability. The natural environment remains one of the most defining aspects of New Hampshire's identity. Forests cover a significant portion of the state, providing ecological stability, economic resources, and recreational opportunities. These forests support wildlife habitats, regulate water systems, and contribute to industries such as timber and outdoor tourism. However, they are increasingly affected by environmental pressures such as invasive species, changing temperature patterns, and severe weather events. Water systems, including rivers, lakes, and groundwater reserves, are equally important. They provide drinking water, support agriculture, and sustain tourism-based economies. Lake Winnipesaukee and other major water bodies are central to both ecological balance and cultural identity, attracting visitors while also requiring careful environmental management to maintain water quality and shoreline stability. The cultural life of New Hampshire is deeply connected to its landscape and historical traditions. Small towns remain central to social organization, and civic participation at the local level is a defining feature of the state. Town meetings, where residents gather to directly vote on local policies and budgets, represent one of the oldest forms of direct democracy in the United States and continue to shape political engagement. This system fosters a strong sense of community responsibility and local autonomy. At the same time, cultural life is not static. It has evolved with demographic changes, migration patterns, and broader national influences. Arts communities, music festivals, and regional cultural institutions have expanded in recent decades, adding diversity and vibrancy to what was once a more homogeneous cultural environment. Education plays a central role in shaping both cultural and economic development. Public education is widely valued, and the state consistently performs well in national educational metrics. Higher education institutions contribute significantly to intellectual life and economic development, most notably Dartmouth College, which is part of the Ivy League and serves as a major center for research, medicine, and innovation. Other colleges and universities across the state provide workforce training and educational access, helping to support regional economies and reduce geographic disparities. These institutions also help attract students and professionals from across the country, contributing to population diversity and economic vitality. Demographically, New Hampshire has experienced gradual but meaningful change over time. The population remains relatively small compared to other states, and it is unevenly distributed, with higher density in the southern region and more rural characteristics in the north. The state has one of the older median ages in the country, reflecting both an aging population and its attractiveness to retirees seeking a quieter lifestyle. However, younger families and professionals are increasingly moving into southern areas due to employment opportunities and proximity to Boston. While the population remains predominantly white compared to national averages, increasing diversity has emerged through migration and economic integration. These demographic trends are shaping housing demand, labor markets, and public service needs across the state. Politically, New Hampshire occupies a unique position in the United States due to its first-in-the-nation presidential primary. This event draws national attention every election cycle and gives the state an outsized influence in shaping early political momentum. Candidates often engage directly with voters in town halls and small community events, reflecting the state's tradition of retail politics. The political culture tends to emphasize independence, with voters frequently splitting between parties depending on candidates and issues rather than strict partisan loyalty. This reflects a broader cultural emphasis on individual judgment and skepticism of centralized authority. Economically, the modern structure of New Hampshire is characterized by diversification and regional integration. Small and medium-sized businesses dominate the economic landscape, particularly in manufacturing, healthcare, technology, and services. The absence of a broad-based sales tax or general income tax has contributed to the state's reputation as business-friendly, although it relies more heavily on property taxes for revenue. Economic growth is uneven, with southern regions benefiting from proximity to Boston's labor market, while northern areas depend more on tourism, agriculture, and seasonal industries. This regional imbalance continues to shape policy discussions around infrastructure, education, and economic development. Housing has become one of the most pressing issues in recent years. Increased demand driven by population growth and migration from neighboring states has led to rising property values, particularly in desirable commuter towns. At the same time, limited land availability and local zoning restrictions have constrained housing development, creating affordability challenges for middle and lower income residents. These pressures have implications for workforce stability, as essential workers in healthcare, education, and service industries may struggle to find housing near employment centers. Infrastructure development, particularly transportation, also faces challenges due to heavy reliance on private vehicles and limited public transit options. Healthcare is another critical sector shaped by demographic and geographic realities. An aging population has increased demand for medical services, long-term care, and specialized treatment facilities. Rural areas in particular face shortages of healthcare providers, leading to disparities in access. Telemedicine and regional healthcare networks have expanded to address these gaps, but challenges remain in ensuring equitable access across all parts of the state. Public health efforts increasingly focus on preventive care, mental health services, and substance use treatment, reflecting broader national trends as well as local needs. Environmental policy and conservation remain central to New Hampshire's identity and future planning. The state's extensive forests, mountain ranges, and freshwater systems are both ecological assets and economic foundations. Conservation efforts aim to preserve biodiversity, maintain water quality, and protect natural landscapes from overdevelopment. Climate change has introduced new challenges, including reduced snow reliability in winter, shifting rainfall patterns, and increased frequency of extreme weather events. These changes affect industries such as skiing, forestry, and agriculture, requiring adaptive strategies across sectors. Environmental management increasingly emphasizes sustainability, resilience, and long-term ecological balance. Agriculture, though relatively small in economic scale, contributes to rural life and local food systems. Small farms produce dairy, fruits, vegetables, and specialty products, often sold through farmers' markets and community-supported agriculture programs. Farmers face challenges related to land development pressure, changing climate conditions, and economic competition, but many have adapted through diversification and sustainable practices. This integration of agriculture into local economies reflects broader values of self-sufficiency and community-based production. Energy systems in New Hampshire are gradually transitioning toward more sustainable models, including increased adoption of solar power and small-scale renewable energy projects. While fossil fuels still dominate overall energy consumption, especially for heating during cold winters, policy discussions increasingly focus on reducing emissions and improving efficiency. Energy planning must balance environmental goals with the practical realities of seasonal climate demands, particularly in rural areas where infrastructure constraints are more pronounced. Social life in New Hampshire continues to reflect a blend of tradition and change. Small town culture remains strong, with community events, volunteer organizations, and civic participation playing important roles in daily life. At the same time, urban and suburban areas are becoming more diverse and economically dynamic. Cultural expression has expanded through arts, music, and educational programs, contributing to a richer and more varied social landscape. Religious participation has declined over time, consistent with broader regional trends in New England, but civic and cultural institutions continue to provide strong community cohesion. The future of New Hampshire will likely be defined by its ability to manage competing pressures of growth and preservation. Demographic change, economic diversification, housing affordability, infrastructure development, and environmental sustainability are all interconnected challenges that require coordinated planning. The state's historical emphasis on local governance and community decision-making provides both strengths and limitations in addressing these issues. While local autonomy fosters engagement and responsiveness, it can also complicate large-scale planning efforts. Ultimately, the long-term trajectory of New Hampshire reflects continuity amid transformation. Its identity remains rooted in independence, civic participation, and deep connection to the natural environment, even as it adapts to modern economic and demographic realities. Institutions such as Dartmouth College continue to anchor intellectual and economic development, while small towns preserve traditions of local governance and community life. The balance between preservation and progress is not a temporary condition but a defining characteristic of the state's evolution. As New Hampshire moves forward, it continues to represent a unique model within the United States, one where history, environment, and civic culture remain tightly interwoven, shaping a society that is both stable and continually changing. Thank you for watching this video.